Welcome back to Odd Socks. So it's that time of year where there's a lot going on here on our allotment. This time of year it's all about clearing the beds and prepping for next year. Maybe planting some of those seedlings that you've done over the last month or two and trying to keep a good maintenance here on our plot. There's been quite a lot of dense fog throughout the whole of the morning. But the cobwebs are starting to pearl, where you get those brilliant, beautiful little droplets of moisture that look so beautiful at this time of year. I think the beans that I've left on the plants at this time of year have no chance of drying outside at the moment. And I think next week the weather forecast is going to be wet as well. So I think I may harvest some of those beans and actually bring them indoors, just so I can get them to dry out a little bit, because I would like to keep some of these for seed to save us some costs for next year. Now, as you can see in this wheelbarrow that I brought down, we have wood chip. Now, this is a very rough wood chip. At this time of year, it's quite hard to get hold of from the local gardeners, any wood chip that hasn't got leaf in. As the months go on and all the trees start dropping their leaves, if there's any wood chippings going, it'll be much easier for us. Now, that particular wood chipping, the clean wood chipping, I really do need to put in the chicken run because of where it is and the constant rain that we've had for what feels like forever. It really is getting quite muddy there. And every time I put wood chip down, they are digging areas into the bare soil, which is then making it very muddy, which then in turn is making my eggs messy, because they do really love to scratch around in that mud. Now, I have put in a couple of bales of straw just to keep them up off that muddy floor. And at the moment it is working, but I think long term it's not the best idea, but I think for the short term it's going to work okay. Now, this wood chip is full of mycelium growth. Now, this was fresh, delivered to us about 4 or 5 days ago, and it is lovely and warm to touch. You can see all the webs of life growing in this wood chip. Now, this is a laurel bush, so I don't really want to compost laurel. It can be toxic in some forms, but I have got loads of areas of pathways where we don't grow. This does need to go on. So at this time of year, it is all about wood chipping our paths that we've already got, creating new no-dig beds, which is what we're going to be doing in a certain area, topping up all our no-dig beds that we've got already, and of course harvesting some of the produce that is now ready at this time of year. So for us at this time of year, it actually is really quite busy, especially with any projects. Now, the winter months is great to do those projects because there isn't as much growing. There is plenty of time to come down and do some of those jobs. Now, this area really does need a load going down. It does need a good top up. Now, we're not that bothered about what wood chip we use for our pathways. It's not something we stress over, and I have no problem using this amount for a mulch, just to help keep those weeds down. In an ideal world, I would love clean wood chip, but at this time of year, with the leaves still on the trees, it's not going to happen. But this will add some benefits into the surrounding soils. So when I do create certain areas with certain beds, the roots eventually will be able to root into those pathways. And that's why I love doing wood chip paths. All this rotting down over the next couple of years will create a really good, rich environment underneath this wood chip. Now, this is my Brassica cage. Now, I have got brassicas growing in different areas, but for this one, we made it a little bit bigger and taller so we can actually stand Now I've got a couple of red cabbages here that have been ready for quite a while, and I've been leaving it as long as I possibly can. Now this I actually really do enjoy. And considering how much slugs that we had issues with at the beginning of the year, that's actually not that bad. It's a really good, dense cabbage. Now, it looks like I have got a few slugs in here or there, but it's not actually as bad as I was expecting. Now, I've already harvested, I think, 4 or 5 of these, and I've used them in pickles and for meals as well. It really is delicious. I just love to pan fry it with a bit of apple, maybe a bit of apple juice, a little bit of vinegar and some demerara sugar. It really does lift the flavour. Now, I was hoping to keep one of these in the ground till Christmas, but I don't think I want to risk it. So I'm actually going to harvest my Christmas cabbage and actually prep it and pop it in the freezer. And then Christmas Day, it's one less dish that I actually have to worry about. Now, this isn't the biggest red cabbage that I think we've done, but it is quite heavy. There's no splitting at the moment, and that is quite a good weight. So I'm quite pleased with that. Sometimes our red cabbages have been really hit and miss. Sometimes when we've grown elsewhere, we've had some fantastic growth with our red cabbages. The last couple of years here, we have really struggled. But this year, it's kind of made up for it. And I'm really pleased with these. Now in here, I have got another 1 or 2, and I think I'm going to take this one as well, because it really is starting to get eaten. I think the last one was probably the best one of them all, but it will still be good. This one has definitely got more slug damage on it. And you can tell that this has been left way too long because of what's going on here. You can see that the leaves have actually snapped off from the main stem. So I'll take this and I'll see if there's anything worthwhile saving off of it. But as you can see, there is an awful lot of slugs. One of the things that I do need to get from in here is the last of our spring cabbages. Now I've left these a little bit long. And they've formed quite a tight head. But these are ready to go. And again, I've got a couple of dishes I think I'll make and prepped for using throughout the year. I'm not a big fan of the frozen cabbage. I think it holds on too much water. But there is still ways of using these cabbages. I do need to come in here. I've got a lot of leaves that are yellowing that really do need to come off the plant. This just attracts pests and diseases, and it's not good for the actual Brassica cage. Now all I've got to do is clean up this spring cabbage, and hopefully it doesn't taste too bad. But I have got spring cabbages to go into the ground that I sowed a little while ago, and they do need to go in here. So I will have to clear an area at the top where the old spring cabbages are. Now we've been clearing all this old produce, all the nasturtiums, which got really badly frost damaged not so long ago. And they're all ready to come up out of the ground. This area up to here and going back to the archway is no dig, but it is absolutely covered in docks and dandelions, which we do need to hand dig out. We have all sorts of things growing in certain areas. Now we grew some of our squashes here, and it did help keep some of the weeds down. But from this side to here is just clay soil, and it's where we grew our corn this year, which, to be honest, this year it was a major disappointment. We did get a few cobs, but it was nowhere near as sweet as previous years. Just far too much rain and nowhere near enough sunshine. But we have cardboard that we're going to be covering this whole area with, and we have compost to go on, extending this no-dig bed further over. And it's going to take a little bit of work. I want to dig out certain weeds first before I create that no-dig bed. This time of year, it is a great time of year to get that compost on your new beds. And that's what we will be doing over the next month or so. Once this bed is created, this again will be used for our corn for following year. I like growing corn here. It's a nice open area and I can get a half decent amount of corn here. Next year as well, there will also be some of my squashes to grow in the ground and also up the growing arch. Now, one of the jobs that I have been able to almost complete is the polytunnel. So that's this whole area cleared. It did take me a little while to untangle, and I've also added all these root balls from those chili pots. Now, I know there's no diseases or pests that I've noticed in these pots, so I'm happy to add this to the ground. I'm trying to create some bulk in these beds. Now, we have very heavy, hard, compacted clay soil that really does hold on to an awful lot of water just underneath these beds. And creating these no-dig beds, I think it was at the beginning of this year, I only had a certain amount of compost and I was always intending on to go a lot deeper here in our polytunnel. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't necessarily need loads of compost on top to create these no-dig beds. But because I am actually digging into the ground to plant these chilies or these melons, I'm actually hitting compacted clay very, very quickly. Over time, this will, and that compost will be dragged down, the worms will take it into the clay soil and it will start breaking up. But in the meantime, I want to try and create a really good growing medium for next year's growth. What I'm going to do in this polytunnel for next year, I still have not decided. It could be a whole range of things. I think I'm still going to be doing my melons and probably gherkins, and I'll probably grow my Cape gooseberry in here too. I've still got half my chili pots left to actually decanter, but I'm actually going to leave probably the rest of this to do the left-hand side as well. The left-hand side is a lot more weedier. We had actually started to run out of our compost when we did it earlier on in the year. It was only a very thin layer and there is probably more clay on the surface than there is compost or any kind of mulch. I'll probably wait for these chili peppers. Now, I've harvested quite a few chili peppers and normal peppers, but there is still an awful lot of green left on those plants. You can, so I've heard, leave them on the stems like this. Now, this one was all completely green and I'd actually knocked it off last week. And yes, they are starting to ripen. So this may be the way forward, but obviously I'll probably have to take it into a frost-free place. I'm going to leave it for the next week, maybe 2 weeks, to see if I can push to get some of these to ripen. I really want my habaneros to ripen. I've got so many green ones on there. I really want some heat from those chilies. So again, I think for the next week or two, I'm going to leave that side, even though it's that side that really does need some work. Now, one of the things that I have grown this year, and to be honest, I'm not going to lie, I actually forgot about, was our carobi. Now, this is all very ready. And it has been absolutely fully attacked by all sorts of insects. Now, I didn't grow that many. I had a lot eaten at the beginning of the year. Now, there isn't many that hasn't been munched, and there's quite a few holes throughout. But the good thing with this, I can probably just work around it. This one's not so bad. They're a really beautiful size and such a beautiful colour. Now really I should have harvested these a little while ago, but I really did forget that I had them here. Now this area is an area that is a bed at the bottom half, and we've just loosely covered it with netting. And as you can see, this one has done quite well. It's a lovely cabbage. I think it's a drumhead. And this is ready to go really, but I'm not going to harvest it today. I've got enough cabbage to deal with. It's going to have to carry on fending for itself a little bit longer. Now I have got other cabbages here as well, but to be honest, apart from maybe one or two more, this is probably the best one. I think with this particular lettuce, I'm actually going to take it whole. Normally, I'll only take a few leaves, but I've got a few things I would like to cook and use with this lettuce. But considering I only sowed these, well, probably about a month, 2 months ago, it's not a bad little harvest, and it smells beautiful. Now the last thing I am actually going to harvest today is some beetroot. Now I've taken most of the really big beetroots out a couple of days ago, but I have still got quite a few left in the ground. Now these are the smaller of our beetroot, but we have got it left in several areas. Now the frost really did get to this beetroot the other day, and it really didn't help it. But I think if I harvest some of the bigger ones and leave anything else left in the ground that's maybe a little bit too small, if it survives, fantastic. If it doesn't, well, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Now I have got some chard and I have got a little bit of sorrel, but the sorrel's been battered by the frost. We had quite a hard frost here the other day, and it did do quite a bit of damage, but the weather forecast is going to be mild for the next week at least. So I'm in no rush to harvest everything just yet. But that's it for today. It was all about the clearing and the little bit of harvesting today. And just a reminder that it doesn't actually have to slow down here on your allotments or your growing spaces. This time of year is a great year to start planning and prepping areas for growing for next year. So let me know in the comments, guys, what are you doing at this time of year? What's your plans for these next few months of winter? We're going to be very busy, and hopefully next year we'll have an even better harvest here on our plot.